Hello, this is part 2 in the series on Schillinger harmonization of a diatonic melody. After presenting the source material, the diatonic melody in part 1, in this episode you'll learn harmonization techniques when composing within the Schillinger diatonic harmony system. There will be fundamentals and a set of examples with chord progressions and instrumental forms in various musical styles. In this series, we are applying techniques from the Schillinger System of Musical Composition Book 6, which is about the correlation of harmony and melody. It covers melody creation from a given harmony and the reverse process, that is, the harmonization of melody, which is covered in Chapter 3. Throughout the series, we start from a given diatonic melody, and in this episode, the focus is on a diatonic harmonization. I'll discuss the fundamentals and show examples in various musical styles. More specifically, you'll learn about aspects such as chord density, the melody tension range, and how the harmony is shaped with chord structure, root cycles, and voice leading. You may support my tutorial production efforts through a PayPal donation or as a long-term patron. All support is most welcome. Let's now dive into the diatonic harmonization approach. This section summarizes the content from part 1. You may want to fast forward to section 3, where new aspects will be introduced. Let me sketch the Schillinger system context for this series on harmonization. Book 6 correlates melodic aspects from Book 3 and the special theory of harmony in Book 5. In part 1 I introduced this overview diagram, which shows the symbol M for melody on the left, and I used the example melody to discuss several melodic aspects in detail. Book 6, Chapter 3 presents 3 harmonization approaches: diatonic, chromatic and symmetric. The melody may also be of either type, so we have a total of 9 possible combinations, but since the source melody is diatonic, that set reduces to 3 options. A further limitation is using diatonic harmonization, as is the case in this part, leaving the other options for part 3 and 4 in the series. Thus, we will use chord structures in thirds and the diatonic harmony aspects as presented in Schillinger System Book 5. Watch this video as an introduction to the system terminology. Revisit part 1, where I discussed melody design aspects in great detail. You'll find the melody characteristics there in various subsections. And this is the annotated melody in staff notation. The phrase is 9 measures long in 4/4 time signature, and it has a rhythmic pattern overlay with 8-note time unit on a melodic continuity with pitches from the 7-pitch Ionian scale. Thus, we have obtained a diatonic melody in C major, with typical characteristics, such as an overall pitch curve with climax, and various resistance increasing techniques, such as the leap step patterns, the use of secondary axes, syncopation, and the cambiata patterns. Listen to the source diatonic melody in C major. In this section, we'll discover new territory and move over into the harmony domain. We investigate the effect of the chord density, here expressed as the ratio of M/H. And then we'll look at diatonic harmonization in detail, that is, the selection of chord structures and progressions. The first degree of freedom in melody harmonization is the chord density. I'll show what I mean by that by focusing on the first 2 measures of the melody, and then discuss a set of 10 harmonization alternatives. We may go for a sparse or a busy harmonization, which I notated as the ratio of M/H, the chord density. In the 10 alternative solutions, I've indicated the ratio, which may be fixed, as shown in the first 8 chord progressions, or variable, as is the case for the last 2 examples. You'll see each example in detail in a minute. In case of sparse harmonization, we have multiple melody note attacks per chord, which corresponds to a ratio M/H greater than 1. Here is the example with 2M/H, 2 melody notes per chord. Here is the opposite case, M over H smaller than 1, a busy harmonization with up to 4 chords per melody note attack. Be aware that the chord density parameter is relevant for all 3 harmonization types, diatonic, chromatic and symmetric. The next aspect is the melody tension range. Since we are working with chords and thirds, each melody note attack corresponds to a chordal function between root 1 and 13. This implies tension ranking. Chordal functions 1, 3, 5, root 3rd and 5th are low tension, but the tension level increases when the melody note corresponds to a dissonant chordal function 7, 9 or 11. The 13 is a kind of mixed function, since for some chord structure types it may be considered an added 6th. I've indicated the tension range in the examples, and there you'll find both a narrow and a wide melody tension range. From the previous subsection, you may have the idea that melody tension range is an independent design parameter. However, in the diatonic harmonization approach, that is not the case. When harmonizing a melodic continuity, the result will be a chord progression with variable tension chord structures. Schillinger recommends the use of positive diatonic root cycles R3, R5 and R7, with the root descending by a 3rd, 5th or ascending stepwise. Again, I've marked the root cycles in my 10 opening measure examples. The root cycle concept is discussed in many of my tutorials, but you may want to refer to the introductory video on diatonic harmony that I mentioned earlier. The problem increases in complexity when we also consider the chord structures in the progression. Now we have to match several design parameters. Firstly, there is a match between the melody note attack chordal function and the chord tension. I've carefully analyzed all examples in the Schillinger book, and the result is the table in the diagram on the right. In general, the chord tension is equal to or 1 degree lower than the melody chordal function. That is indicated by the green squares. The orange squares, where chord tension is 2 or more degrees below the melody chordal function, is less suitable. In the yellow zone you are overdoing it with too complex harmonies for a simple melody. As I said before, chordal function 13 has ambiguity, as it may be interpreted as added 6th. Schillinger releases these somewhat strict requirements in case of a sparse chord progression, and I will demonstrate that later. You'll find chord structure labels above the staff in my example set. But here's the tricky bit. When we start to use dissonant 7th, 9th and 11th chords, we end up with an additional set of voice leading requirements in the 4-part diatonic harmonization approach. You'll find a whole series on these chord types, but use this overview tutorial as a reference. Thus, the problem has become more complex as we design a chord progression for a given diatonic melody. Let me illustrate the previous fundamental aspects with the opening measures harmonization examples. The first 2 examples demonstrate a sparse harmonization with 2 melody note attacks per chord. The melody tension range lies between chordal functions 5 and 13. The chord density ratio M over H is fixed, and we have positive diatonic root cycles only. Listen to the first example. This solution has some flaws. Yes, we have a positive root cycle R3, but the chord type, the triad A minor, provides poor support for the pitch B, the chordal function 9 in the melody. We are in the orange section of the chord structure diagram. The melody note has become an appoggiatura, not a properly harmonized attack. Besides, the voice leading is suboptimal, with the parallel perfect fifths between melody and top harmony part. The second solution demonstrates root cycle R5, but the F major triad is another case of poor support, in this case for chordal function 11. The harmony voice leading is okay, with smooth stepwise motion and contrary opening motion between outer parts, but there's another set of hidden parallel octaves. I took better care in example 3, with two chordal functions 7 in the melody, and the closing 13 harmonized as added sixth. The pitch G, chordal function 7, is harmonized with a triad. The note C gets support from a first inversion position 7th chord. In the harmony, notice the correct preparation and resolution of the dissonant chordal function 7. A mishap is the parallel octave interval between melody and top harmony part. This hopefully demonstrates that combining all design parameter requirements may become rather a puzzle. The next three examples increase the chord density slightly, with 1 or 2 chords per melody note. Example 4 has significantly lower tension range than its successor. The harmony rhythm is static, with mostly half notes, which leads to 2 or more chords below the opening pitch G. And here's another Schillinger recommendation. For held notes, increase the melody chordal function number, and that is shown here for the three cases. I stayed in the safe, the green squares band in the chord structure selection table in the top right. New in this solution set is the occurrence of the 9th chord, S9. This contains two dissonant chordal functions, 7 and 9, that require correct preparation and resolution. Note that I failed in properly resolving the strongest dissonant 9. And another requirement in Schillinger diatonic harmony is that we can have series of triads and 7 chords, but only single occurrences of S9 and S11, and then in root position. So again, another complicating factor in melody harmonization. Listen to example 4. Let's go bad with example 5 and demonstrate a sequence of negative diatonic root cycles. The consequence is that voice leading for dissonant chordal functions now is nigh impossible. Also, I wrote the 7th degree B diminished triad in first inversion position. It has the highly dissonant minor 9 in the melody, without support. Listen to the different quality of this solution. In example 6, we increase the chord density with, on average, 2 chords per melody note. There are quite a few 7th chords as 7, some of which in first inversion position. We have obtained a harmonic sequence R3, R7. Most of the dissonant chordal functions are prepared and resolved correctly. In the next two examples, we use fixed M over 2H, 2 chords per melody note. Example 7 uses a higher melody tension range than its successor. Again, I followed Schillinger's recommendation and increased the chordal function number for longer duration notes. I may skip intermediate chordal function numbers, such as in 5 going to 11 or 1 to 5. Example 7 has one occurrence of a 9th chord, D minor 9, and an S11, the F11, written as E minor over F. Note that there is correct preparation and resolution of dissonant chordal functions. Notice the delayed resolution of pitch F. What remained is a parallel fifth between melody and harmony top part. This is a rich sounding diatonic harmonization. Both examples have positive diatonic root cycles only. In measure 22, beat 4, I should have written F major 9, as it is a 9th chord. Again, the voice leading puzzle has become so complex that I could not prepare and resolve all harmony dissonances correctly. The resolution in the top harmony part is an accepted next best solution. Be aware that occasionally suboptimal dissonance handling and parallel motion is not a real problem in more modern and contemporary musical idioms. Only in writing traditional functional harmony this becomes critical. The intertwining of root position chords and inversions nicely beefs up the harmonic interest. And now two examples with variable chord density and overall busier harmonization. The chord progression consists of positive root cycles only, and there is a wide melody tension range. In example 9, I put two ninth chords S9 in succession, which is against the rules, and makes appropriate voice leading complicated. Dissonance resolution is okay, but note the very poor preparation of chordal function 9 in the G sus9 chord. You'll hear a harmonic sequence R5 in measure 1. There's too much parallel motion when going from measure 1 to 2. In example 10, I implemented a very busy diatonic harmonization, and I had to slow down the tempo for you to hear the details. There's a single S9 chord, the G sus9, plus a long series of root position and inverted 7 chords. The voice leading is better now, with mostly correct dissonance preparation and resolution. This concludes the demonstration of harmonization and part voice leading issues. Be aware that all 10 examples use only pitches from the original 7-unit diatonic scale C Ionian. We continue with 5 diatonic harmonization examples for the full diatonic melody M shown at the bottom. There will be chord progressions in various modes, 4-part voice leading, and you'll hear instrumental form examples in various styles. For an introduction to Schillinger instrumental forms, watch this tutorial. So here's the first harmonization in the key of C major, and I tried to stay very close to the classical music idiom. There is variable chord density, with the harmonic rhythm for quarter note time unit shown at the top. The melody chordal functions are mainly 1, 3 and 5. There are 4 7s, 3 9s and 2 13s. I've marked a few shorter notes with symbol X, as passing tones with no real consequence for the design of the chord progression. Following Schillinger's recommendations, triad S5 and 7 chords are fine here for melody support, and therefore we may use series of both root and inversion positions. In measures 5 and 6, the 9-to-1 lead part is an abbocciatura, since the harmonization is with a simple triad. 7th chords S7 here would have created a richer texture. The labels at the bottom show mostly positive diatonic root cycles, with 2 R-3 exceptions. A functional harmony interpretation reveals 2 deceptive cadences, with the dominant degree G major triad going to the submediant degree A minor, a passing 6/4 group in measure 5, and a closing cadence, second inversion tonic degree C over G, to dominant 7th chord G7, to tonic degree triad. There are 2 dissonant chordal functions 7, the E in the melody in measure 4 and the F in measure 8. Both resolve correctly. However, there are still a few parallel 5th and parallel octave gremlins that could do with another review. In 2 spots there is good contrary motion between outer voices. Time now to listen to this chord progression. That was a long story behind a fairly simple and traditional diatonic harmonization. I then decided on a light texture instrumental form, with melody in oboe and first violins. The 4-part harmony is distributed over the harp and other string groups, with pizzicato playing double basses. The musical idiom is second half 18th century, the classical period. I aimed for a contrast between the staccato 8 notes and the legato playing over the busier measures 4 and 7. But I should have done more outspoken MIDI editing in order to create the Mannheim Schule effects with strong gradual dynamics. Now the texture remains too smooth, I find, but anyhow, it is an example of how a Schillinger harmonization approach may be turned into orchestral music. The second example I like better. This time I wanted to try another diatonic mode and come up with a chord progression in G Mixolydian. The harmony now is three-part, a thinner sounding texture, and we have variable chord density M over H. Note the dance-like rhythmical bouncing in measure 7. The progression starts with triads, almost exclusively. In the second half the density of 7 chords increases, and then we close with a surprise half cadence 1 to 5 minor, with 2 ninth chord structures when we include the melody note over the now 4-part harmony. You may call that a style inconsistency, indeed. I've marked the negative diatonic root cycles. These disturb the harmonic flow and make correct dissonant chordal function handling a lot more complex. Still, the overall voice leading quality is good. The orange arrows indicate the next best alternative solution to stepwise descending motion. In measure 7 I demonstrated the Schillinger technique of acceptable chord position change, although here it also involves the transfer of pitch E, chordal function 7. Note the contrary motion patterns in this chord progression. A genuine half cadence would have required closing on the dominant degree D major chord, but the F sharp would have meant a non-diatonic pitch. I created an instrumental form for solo harpsichord, with lots of 16th note embellishment patterns in imitation. The style is late 16th, early 17th century, a more or less typical setting as you would find in William Byrd keyboard music. He wrote several collections of solo keyboard music, such as the Fitzwilliam Virginal book, where virginal refers to the musical instrument. And obviously, you will hear the total style inconsistency in the closing measures, which I would describe as musical murder most foul. But the rest is fairly convincing. After 2 chord progressions in major, you'll see a chord progression in modal minor, in this case E Phrygian. There is 4-part harmony below the lead melody, with constant duration harmonic rhythm. The melody tension range shows chordal functions between 1 and 13, the widest possible range. Since I used diatonic triads only for the harmonization, this means that chordal functions 9 and 11 must be considered appoggiaturas, suspensions or passing tones. I deliberately chose to have simple triads for support. There are 4 negative diatonic root cycles, the others are positive. The second half of the melody is positive root cycles only, in agreement with Schillinger's recommendation. The absence of 7 chords makes voice leading fairly easy. Using triads in a 4-part setting implies doubling a chordal function in the harmony. There is one nasty set of parallel octaves in measure 7 that could have easily been corrected. Locally, you'll find contrary motion with somewhat poor and suboptimal parallel motion in measure 7. To me, the progression sounds like Ravel writing in quasi-ancient musical idiom, particularly in the closing. The instrumental form is a chorale setting for woodwind quintet, with oboe lead and a harmony assigned to a pair of clarinets and 2 bassoons. I inserted a few diatonic passing tones in order to create moving parts. To be honest, the result to me sounded acceptable at best, but quite boring. as another weak classical music imitation. Maybe it's the tempo or poor MIDI controller editing when creating the mock-up. So this became a case of kill your darlings and try again, which means deriving an alternative instrumental form for the same E Phrygian chord progression. And now I wanted a more contemporary idiom, which led to this metamorphosis in reggae shuffle style. I inserted 2 opening measures as an intro. The lively bass guitar part was created from the bottom harmony part, using repeated notes, occasional other harmony notes and triplet rhythm patterns. Thus, the harmony sounds as... I decided to also process the melody part. It is played by a trio of horns, trumpet, alto saxophone and trombone. They mostly play unisono, with trombone doubling at the lower octave. In 4 spots I used another Schillinger technique, a 3-part setting through diatonic coupling. You'll find this approach in my dedicated tutorials on Schillinger strata harmony. The coupling yields 3-part diatonic parallel phrases. The score is a 3-layer setting, with horns in the upper, organ harmonies in the middle and the bass guitar in the lower layer. Listen to the melody adaptation and note the trombone part reaching the high register. And here's the full ensemble, with drums, percussion and the synthesizer part added. I definitely was more pleased with this alternative instrumental form. It also is evidence of how the Schillinger diatonic harmonization approach can be applied in a contemporary music idiom. The final example is a fresh harmonization of the melody, also in E Phrygian minor mode. I leave it to you as an exercise to do the 3 missing modal options: harmonization in F Lydian, D Dorian minor and A Aeolian mode. We are back with a 4-part setting with high harmonic density. There's a lot of chords in this 9-measure phrase. The melody chordal functions at the top show a wide range, and most of these are in the higher numbers, 9 to 13. I adhered to the rule to use increasing melody chordal function numbers for held notes. There's complex harmony, using all chord tension types between pure triads and 11 chords. Here notated as suspended dominant 9 chords, S sus 9. I applied the Schillinger rule to use single, isolated instances of S9 and S11. Look at the root cycle pattern and find a number of harmonic features. In measure 2 to 3, I demonstrate the R0 cycle, that is, a changing chord tension type over a constant root. Here the D minor 9 going to D minor 7. Measure 6 contains a passing 6-4 group, G6-4, with the G7 root position to second inversion D minor 7 to first inversion position G major triad. I accompanied the melody cambiata sequence pattern with a harmonic sequence in measure 7-8. There's a single negative root cycle measure 3, and the example closes with 3 negative root cycles R-7 to R-3 to R-5, thus obtaining a plagal closing cadence with floating quality. This busy harmonization leads to a voice-leading challenge. Strict classical theory of harmony preparation and resolution of dissonant chordal functions is not achievable here, but I still managed quite well. I've marked the contrary and parallel autopart motion with this set of arrows. Now listen to the result. I'm happy with the chord progression. A rich texture with the harmony providing excellent support to the high tension range in the melody. In the instrumental form, I wanted to create another example in contemporary style using many synthesizers and electronic instruments. I slowed down the tempo considerably in order to do justice to the high chord density. Let's have a look at what I did with the melody. Firstly, I applied Hocket and distributed melodic snippets over two monophonic portamento synthesizers and a flugelhorn. These three instruments were panned hard left, right and center. Watch this tutorial I did about the Hocketes technique. Then, from the strata harmony approach, I added a top layer that is above the melody and assigned to another synthesizer. It plays a part with a motif, obtained through the melodic figuration technique. The turn motif is played with 8th note rhythm and in 16th note diminution form. There's more about melodic figuration in this tutorial. Since the turn motif uses chromatic directional units, you'll find here the only non-diatonic pitches from this episode, and marked with arrows. The example has been extended with 4 intro measures where you'll hear a synthesizer pedal point in arpeggio octaves. Listen to the melodic elements. I'll leave the flugelhorn for later. The harmony is set as sustained chords and distributed over 2 synthesizer pads with strings and vocal sounds. They play the 3 upper harmony parts. The bass part goes to another synthesizer. You'll now hear the full ensemble, with the lead part for flugelhorn, electronic drums with additional shaker percussion and some more synthesizer support. In this tutorial, you learned about the Schillinger approach with diatonic harmonization of a diatonic melody. There are several design parameters involved. You may choose a sparse or dense harmonization with few or many chords. The source melody is interpreted in terms of chordal function numbers. Decide on the melody tension range and find appropriate chord structures that support these melody chordal functions. That is depicted in the diagram that we saw frequently in this video. We have to deal with an interdependent design problem. Then there are Schillinger recommendations for handling long melody notes and a preference for positive diatonic root cycles. You typically end up with a combination of techniques. Quite a bit of attention went into the design of the 4-part harmony setting. This is a set of skills that you have to master before trying to come up with chord progressions within the melodic context. I showed several options with example chord progressions and instrumental forms in various diatonic modes and musical styles. The other two approaches, chromatic and symmetric harmonization, you'll find in the remaining episodes. For my Patreon supporters, there's a companion document with text, diagrams and score fragments. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Use the links in the video description to support my tutorial production efforts through a PayPal donation or as a patron. There's more content on my website. Since this is the last video of the year, I would like to thank you for watching and your great comments, and I wish you all a healthy, prosperous and creative year 2024. See you then!